Hello and welcome back once again to my channel Biology with Dr. Pankaj Shah. Now today's topic is about plant tissues. As you know that the structural and functional unit of any life form is a cell. But these cells in multicellular organisms, these cells come together and they make a common group, and that group is called as a tissue. If it is made of the cells which are similar in origin, structure and function. So tissue is a group of cells which are similar in origin, structure and function. Now we are going to discuss about plant tissues, and as you know that the plants, they have two type of parts in their body. One is the above ground, which is called as the stem or shoot, and the below ground part which is called as the root. Now this is a multicellular organisms. Obviously it has various types of tissues. Now plant body has different types of tissues, and many times it becomes difficult to remember also different type of tissues. Now in this lecture I am going to give you a very easy method by which you will remember it forever. So watch this video only once and you will remember all types of tissues in a very easy manner. Let's start the class. So now plant tissues, next time when you think about plant tissues, you just think about these two words. So plant tissues, so let me write here, plant tissues are of two types, and these two types, remember these two types by this word MP. MP. M means meristematic. So M is, so this is plant tissue. I will use this pen here. Plant tissues, two types, MP. M means meristematic and P means permanent. Now meristematic tissue is a type of tissue which is always dividing. So these are the group of those cells which are always in a state of division. They divide, and when they divide, they increase the parts in the body of the plant, or they give rise to a growth. So meristematic tissues are always dividing and they increase the growth. That growth is called as a primary growth. We will discuss about the primary and secondary growth also. So meristematic cells, they are of different types. They increase the growth of the plant, and permanent tissues are those tissues which do not divide further. They are fixed. They are permanently fixed, and they are very important also for various important structural, functional and organizational work which is required by the plant body. Now this meristematic tissue is always dividing, as we discussed. Now the cells which are here in the plant body, this type of cells, they are basically round shaped, and they are because they are always dividing, so they are close to each other like this. They will not have much gap in between, so they will be close to each other, and in the center they will have a big nucleus because they are always dividing. So they have a big nucleus. Normally you know that the plant cell, if you make a plant cell, that cell has a big vacuole, but that is for the permanent, not the meristematic. So meristematic cells are like this. They have a big central nucleus. They have a nucleus, central nucleus, cytoplasm, and there are no vacuoles because these vacuoles are not required. Vacuoles are required basically for the purpose of storage and secretion. So that is the storage, and the things which are also kept for reserve materials, that is in the vacuoles. So the permanent tissue, if I make a permanent plant cell, it will be something like this. It will have cell wall, primary cell wall. There are different types of cell wall also. We will discuss that also. Now the difference here in the permanent tissue, that they will have some gap here. You can see some gap also in between the cells. There will be some intercellular spaces, but what they have importantly, they have a big vacuole. A big vacuole is present here in the permanent cells. The nucleus obviously is present, but it is pushed in the side. And then there are other things like chloroplast, mitochondria, which are always required. Chloroplasts are found generally in the green area, green leaves. Okay, so let us come back to the meristematic tissue. Now, meristematic tissue is of 3 different types. How can you remember that? So, meristematic tissue is of 3 different types. Remember these 3 types by this word Ali. So plant tissues, 2 types, MP, meristematic and permanent. Meristematic and permanent. Meristematic is further divided into 3 types, Ali, apical, lateral and intercalary. Now let me draw here apical, lateral and intercalary. So this will be apical, L will be lateral, and this I will be intercalary. 3 types, apical, lateral and intercalary. These are the 3 types of the meristematic tissue. Now apical, as the name itself tells, this is in the apex. Apex means top. So this tissue, meristematic tissue, which is apical, is present in the top of the plant. So top means which part? Well, plant, as we know, it has a stem and root. So both top of both. That means it will be present in the top of a stem. So if I make the stem top, it will be like these are the growing leaves. This is the area of the apical meristem, like this. So this is the area which you can see here. This is the leaf primordia or the developing leaves. Developing leaf. This area which you see here, this area, this is the apex. So this is apical meristem. Which apical meristem? Shoot, because it is stem. So it is shoot apical meristem or stem apical meristem. Similarly, in the root also there is a meristem which is called as a root apical meristem. The root apical meristem will be present here. This is the root apical meristem here. But root apical meristem is also protected by a layer of, by a layer of cells, yes, that is called as a cap, root cap. So it has a root cap here. So this will be the root cap. We will make a separate video. We will discuss about the root cap, and this is the root apical meristem. So this is the root apical meristem. The root cap basically protects the growing root part, which is going deep into the soil, and also provides some moisture for the like attraction of the bacteria which are decomposers. So we'll have a separate discussion on the root anatomy. So we have seen that plant tissues are of 2 types, MP, meristematic and permanent. Meristematic is 3 types, Ali, apical, lateral and intercalary. Now this apical meristem is further divided into 3 more types, is also of 3 types. And how can you remember that? Remember this word GPP. GPP. Now what does this mean, GPP? So let me draw here, or let me write here. G means ground meristem. P means protoderm, and this P here means ProCambium. So these are the 3 types, GPP. Once again, plant tissues, 2 types, MP, meristematic and permanent. Meristematic is of 3 types, Ali, apical, lateral, intercalary. Apical is of 3 types, GPP, ground, Protoderm and ProCambium. Now ground meristem, basically, now you can see that this is a part of apical meristem, which is here, the apical meristem. Now what happens that when the apical meristem cells divide, so they will grow further in the length, they will increase, and the cells which are now produced, what happens to them, they slowly they differentiate, they change, and this is how the meristematic cells will be changed into different types of cells, and later on they will be changed into the permanent type of tissues. So ground, Protoderm and ProCambium. Now ground tissue ground tissue, now you can see here these are the cells which are divided. Now what happens, ground tissue is basically found here in the region of the pith, which is the center, and the cortex region. So these are the ground. So ground tissue is present in the cortex and in the pith. So cortex and pith. Ground basically means which fills the ground. Means ground tissues are basically non-vascular and non-epidermal cells. Non-epidermal and non-vascular. They will be either in the center, which are called as a pith in dicot stem, and they are also present, in the region between the epidermis and the vascular tissues, that is called as a cortex. Okay, we have seen ground. Now protoderm, GPP, ground, protoderm, ProCambium. So let me write here, first is ground, second one is protoderm. Now you can see the word itself tells you the meaning. Pro means before, like prokaryote. Pro means before, and karyon means nucleus, means early nucleus, that is prokaryotes. Similarly, pro means before, derm means skin. So before the skin means before the dermis or the epidermis. So this is the dermis or the epidermis. So protoderm, these tissues or these things, these meristematic tissues are found here in this region. Protoderm, these are the protoderm. So protoderm will give rise to epidermis. Protoderm will give rise to epidermis. Ground will give rise to cortex and pith, and protoderm will give rise to epidermis. So a GPP, ground, protoderm and ProCambium. The next one is ProCambium. Now you know that in the plant body, this is epidermis is formed, cortex and pith, but also vascular system is one of the most important thing. So the third one is ProCambium, and all these are in the apical meristem. ProCambium. Now what happens here, the ProCambium? ProCambium are found here because this will divide and it will give rise to all these tissues. ProCambium are present here like this, and what they basically make, ProCambium, they make primary xylem and primary phloem. In all the stems, in all the plants, they have xylem and phloem. We know that xylem is responsible for the conduction, one-way conduction of the water and dissolved minerals from the root to the top, and phloem on the other hand is responsible for the both up and down movement, up and down side movement of the liquid food. So both are important for the plant body, because that is the region, that is the area which is important, and with these tissues the plant bodies can be growing into tall heights, and they will be getting all these nutrients. So the ProCambium gives rise to xylem and phloem, but primary xylem and primary phloem. Primary xylem and primary phloem. Okay, so this is ProCambium. Primary xylem and primary phloem. So this is how the apical meristem is functioning, and we have seen the apical meristem, 3 types, and now we will come to the second type, which is the lateral meristem. Now all this growth which you can see here, it is going up one way, going up in the stem part and going down in the root part. So this growth which we see here, it is called as primary growth. So this growth is called as primary growth, which is shown by the apical meristem. Primary growth. Now lateral meristem, but in the trees, dicotyledon trees, what happens? When their primary growth this is for the lengthwise growth happens. After maturation, after a few years, they also start dividing or growing horizontally. Means their stem thickness or the girth increases like this, and that growth which is horizontal is called as secondary growth. So apical meristem is responsible for the primary growth. So apical meristem is responsible for primary growth, we have seen that, and lateral meristem is important for secondary growth. Lateral meristem shows secondary growth. This one shows primary growth, secondary growth by lateral meristem. Now, how to remember the types of the lateral meristem? Now, the lateral meristem is of two types, VC and CC. VC and CC. VC means Vascular Cambium and CC means Cork Cambium. So VC means Vascular Cambium and CC means Cork Cambium. Now, what is the function and what are these two types of cambium? Now, what happens? If I make the transverse section of this plant stem, transverse section, I'll make it here. Let us see. This is the transverse section of the plant stem, dicot plant stem. So what will you notice? You will notice that it will have vascular bundles arranged in a ring, and in between they will have a cambium. They will have a cambium. And what type of vascular bundles you are seeing here? These are basically arrangement of xylem and phloem. Xylem is inside, this is xylem, and phloem is outside. Okay, so this is phloem. All right. Now, this vascular cambium is so this is vascular cambium, VC. Vascular cambium is a cambium which is present in the vascular bundle. So vascular cambium, VC, present in between the primary xylem and primary phloem. This one is primary xylem, this one is primary xylem, and this one is primary phloem. We discussed about primary xylem and primary phloem also. So vascular cambium is present in between, and each vascular bundle will have this vascular cambium. When the plant undergoes secondary growth, this cambium, vascular cambium, grows horizontally and it gives secondary xylem inside and secondary phloem outside. We will discuss about that also in a different lecture in a detail where we will discuss all these things. So this is the role of vascular cambium. Now the cork cambium, now as you know, if you see here, this central part is called as pith. So this is pith. As you know that this is just the ground tissue which is made up of parenchyma cells. So this is the pith. Normal cells are present here. This is the pith present in the dicot stem. This is the pith. And cortex, the cortex is present here. So this area is called as cortex. Cortex is also a ground tissue. We have seen ground tissue as in the center. This is the pith, and in the between the epidermis. So this is pith and this is cortex. This region is cortex. From the epidermis, this one is epidermis, and this one is the vascular bundle area. Now, one more cambium is present here in the cortex region. So the cambium in the cortex region is called as Cork Cambium. So what is a Cork Cambium? Cork Cambium is a group of cells which are present below the epidermis, and later on when the secondary growth happens, the epidermis, it is also changed into periderm in the tree. Periderm, this epidermis, because epidermis will no longer be there. Epidermis is generally in the young stem. In the old matured trees, it will be called as periderm, and the bark, concept of bark, we will discuss about that also in a different video. So periderm. Now in the cortex region, one cambium tissue is present, and this cambium tissue which is present in the cortex region, this is called as Cork Cambium. And what it does, it makes cork cells outside, cork cells which contribute towards the bark. So we have seen that the lateral, and both of them, they help in the secondary growth of the trees. Now the last type of the meristematic tissue is intercalary. This one is present in monocots, like in bamboo or in grasses. Now what happens here in the intercalary, so let me draw here, it is basically found, this one intercalary is found at the base of the nodes and the internodes. You can see this is the monocot plant, and it has these nodes. So this one is found here at the bases of the nodes, like this, intercalary meristem, and what it does basically, it increases the length of the internode. So it is found at the nodes, and when it divides, it increases the length of the internode. So as a result, the plant increases in the length, and that is present in the monocots. It is also present in the leaf bases also of the monocots. So like against, this is when the grazing animals, they eat the plants, so the new leaves, they again come up very fast in the grasses. So at the nodes, and this is about the monocot. So this is intercalary meristem. This is intercalary meristem, which is found here in the monocots. So this is the meristematic type of tissue. So we have finished the meristematic plant tissues. As you know, there are two types, as I told you in the beginning, MP, meristematic, and permanent. We have covered all the meristematic tissues with their examples and the method to remember them easily. And then we will move to the permanent tissues. Thank you very much. Stay healthy, stay safe.